Hey everyone, thanks for being here. It's springtime and the Harley demo trucks are out and about making their weekend stops so that riders can check out the various 2024 Harley models. We're continuing on with our bike comparison videos from my test rides, a series I'm now calling the 2024 Versus series. You can view the full series here. I also invite you to subscribe and hit that like and notification buttons. If you like the video, I'd really appreciate that. For those of you who have been following the series, you might want to use the chapter links below to skip to the review. The next couple of minutes of intro are going to sound a little familiar. For those who haven't seen any of the comparison videos yet, there's something very important to be aware of if you choose to check out one of these demo weekends. When you're a rider with at least some level of experience, these rides can be a bit challenging depending on the riders in front of you. Some of them can be quite new and are still afraid of the bikes or a little unsure of themselves, which can slow things down. I think one of my pet peeves is people who slow way down on the corners so that they don't have to lean the bike very much. Part of the challenge, I know, is that you're riding different styles of bikes. Some have mid controls, some have forward controls, some have floorboards, some have foot pegs. A couple of them have heel-toe shifters. On some, the clutch engages right away. On others, it's almost all the way out before it engages. So it really can be challenging to go from bike to bike. Each one has a different feel to it. But still, if you're not going to lean your bike going around a corner, in my opinion, go ride a trike. Let's talk about the bikes that are available to ride this year on the demo weekends. We have the Nicer Special, the Sportster S, the Pan America Special, and the CVO Pan America, the Street Bob, the Fat Boy, the Lowrider S and Lowrider ST, the Breakout, the Heritage Classic, Road King Special, Street Glide, Road Glide, CVO Street Glide, CVO Road Glide ST, Road Glide Limited, Ultra Limited, and the Road Glide 3 trike. Here in PA, if you ride a trike, you have to have a special license for that. So that one was actually set aside in case anyone came in who wanted to do that. The bikes that are not in the lineup are the Nightster Standard, Softail Standard, CVO Road Glide, since they have the CVO Road Glide ST in there, the Freewheeler and Tri-Glide Ultra trikes, and of course the Hydra Glide, which is this year's icon bike. The only two bikes I did not ride were the Pan America Special and the CVO Pan America, because Short Legs McShorty Pants here, with his 29-inch inseam, did not feel like dealing with the 31-inch seat height on those bikes. I know the seat height's lower when you're coming to a stop and when you're at a stop, and then they kick back up when you're riding. I know all that, but even at their lowest, I think the lowest is 30.5 inches, and I would rather get some more experience riding bikes with a taller seat height before I go to ride one of those in particular. I have no idea when that's going to happen.
My little in-home studio had to be taken apart temporarily for a couple days, so the rest of this video is going to be done with an audio voiceover. So here we go. There are 3 bikes left in the Harley demo rides. We're going to wrap up the Harley reviews with those 3 bikes today. Next week, my local Indian dealer is having a couple of demo days. If the weather cooperates, I'll be participating in that, so stay tuned for those videos coming up. Meanwhile, today we're talking about the Harley Lowrider S, Lowrider ST, and the Harley Street Bob 114. Looking at the specs, the Lowriders have a 117 engine with 125 foot-pounds of torque and 103 horsepower. They have a fairly high ground clearance, 5.7 inches on the S and 5.9 inches on the ST. Both have a 27-inch seat height and a 5-gallon tank. The S has a front headlight cowl on it. The ST has a frame-mounted mini shark nose fairing and small saddlebags. The S weighs 680 pounds. The ST with the fairing and saddlebags weighs about 40 pounds more at 720. The fairing and saddlebags on the ST will cost you an extra $3,400. The S starts at $20,000 and the ST starts at $23,400. The Street Bob is a bit of a different animal. It has a 114 engine with 119 foot-pounds of torque and 94 horsepower, but also weighs less at 655 pounds. Comparing the torque per pound, power per weight ratio between the Street Bob and the Lowrider S shows that they are actually very close to each other. The Street Bob has a really low 25.8 inch seat height and a small 3.5 gallon tank. It has high handlebars, I think it's 8 or 10 inch apes, and a lower ground clearance than the Lowriders at 4.9 inches. The lean angle on the Lowriders is just over 31 inches due to the high ground clearance, while the lean angle on the Street Bob is 28.5 inches. Street Bob is a much more minimalized bike and is priced less than the Lowriders, starting at $17,000. All three of these bikes have mid-mount controls and an upright riding position. Let's talk about the riding experience on these bikes. All of these bikes are designed for aggressive riding. The lightweight, high-powered engines, lean angles on these bikes make them incredibly easy to whip around the corners. They are a lot of fun to ride. Wind management on the Lowrider S and the Street Bob is basically non-existent. The front cowl on the Lowrider S really doesn't do anything at all as far as wind protection. The fairing on the Lowrider ST definitely helps. It's not fantastic, but for a small touring bike, it does a satisfactory job. One thing to note on these bikes, if you're used to riding bikes with forward controls like the touring bikes, the mid-mount controls do make you feel like your knees are up in your chest. The mid-mount controls do take some getting used to. It does add to the aggressive feel on these bikes though. If you're a rider with long legs, I would imagine these bikes might make your legs feel cramped up and might get uncomfortable before too long. The riding position on these bikes is listed as upright, but I did feel like I was leaning forward slightly. Certainly not as much as the Nightster and Sportster. This is more noticeable in the Lowriders since the Street Bob has those high handlebars. It's certainly not the relaxed riding position of the touring bikes. I would call the riding position on these bikes an aggressive upright. As far as features and comforts go, the Street Bob is a very minimalist bike, as I mentioned before. No cruise control, ABS is optional, the only LED is the headlight, everything else is incandescent. The Lowriders have ABS included and traction control as well as cruise control. They have LEDs on both headlight and tail light. The turning signal lights are incandescent. One thing that doesn't make sense to me at all is the gauges between the Lowrider S and the Lowrider ST. The Lowrider S has a 4-inch round gauge on it, while the Lowrider ST has the small 2-inch rectangular gauge that a lot of the other cruisers have. Why does the touring version of the Lowrider, with its fairing and saddlebags, have a smaller gauge than the non-touring Lowrider S? I don't get that at all. If you have any thoughts on this, leave a comment below. As far as my personal preferences on these bikes, I think the Street Bob is probably my favorite small bike for commuting or around town riding. I wouldn't want to go for more than a couple hours at a time on this bike, and I would definitely put a windshield on it. I see a lot of guys riding bikes with no wind protection at all. That is not my style. I would definitely pick the Street Bob over the Lowrider S, but based on my experience at the demo weekend, that doesn't seem to be the assessment of the general population. The Lowrider bikes seem to be much more popular than the Street Bob, especially with the younger riders. As far as the Lowrider ST goes, it gives you the feel of a touring bike without the heavy weight. So if you want the aggressive feel of these bikes and the fantastic power to weight ratio, but also want to do some touring, the Lowrider ST would be a good option to consider. That is it for this one, folks. As always, please subscribe and like. Stay tuned for more. See you on the next one.